Welcome everyone. Create a brand style guide and kit in Canva. So if you missed last week's video, I highly recommend and encourage you to go watch it because there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're talking about today that is going to be explained. If you've missed it, if you don't quite understand, go watch this video. It explains so much in detail about the ins and outs and the importance of a style guide. The QR code is on the right-hand side, or you can visit our YouTube channel at Acorn Studio Marketing. So before we get into all of this, and from the video last week, before you build your guide, before you do all of this, you need to understand your business, you need to understand your audience, and you need to understand your competitors. If you do not understand those three things, building a guide and building a brand in general is going to be very difficult, and you might, in the end, actually waste time because you don't understand these three things. Like I did mention in the video last week, we do talk a lot more about it. Again, this is a slide from last week's video, but we talked a lot about logo variations, color palette combinations, and font collections. We're actually going to build that today. So not just theoretical and talking about it. We're gonna action these items. So we're going to be building a very simple guide. That's not to say that you can't expand on it. There's a lot of extra things that you can add to a guide, like icons and patterns, lifestyle mockups, additional brand collateral like business cards, all of that kind of stuff. You can add in font and logo rules and restrictions. And then you can also add a color contrast chart, which if you guys have questions about that at the end, I can definitely show you that one. But we're just going to stick to the basics, everything that you need to know to build a guide. This is a sample brand style guide. Laura's going to put in the chat the link to this template. This is going to be the one that we're working off today. So if you do not have a guide, we're actually going to be building a brand style guide with brand assets. So like your logos and your fonts and all of that stuff. There is a QR code in the bottom right-hand corner, but if you want to click the link that Laura is going to put in the chat, it will open up in Canva for you. And this will also work if you have the free version of Canva. This should open up, no problem for you. So before we get into that, everyone remembers Garden Grows. So Garden Grows has been Laura and I's demo brand since day one. So what, 4 years? But Laura was even using it prior to us coming together and building a business. So this thing has been alive for a really long time. And over the years, this has been our play brand that really could come off as like a real brand at this point. And anytime we want to do examples, we just build on it, and it has become like a thing of itself. So today we're going to use Garden Grows as an example, but not Garden Grows itself. So Garden Grows is expanding, and we are adding actually another sub brand onto Garden Grows. I'm really excited to show it to you because Garden Grows is growing. People from the city, they're moving into the area. It is, attracting kind of an older crowd. Garden Grows really wants to get in front of that younger audience. People are moving, like I said, from the city to the country, but we want to bring some of that city living to Garden Grows. So Garden Grows presents Green Space Cafe. So we are opening a cafe inside Garden Grows that is going to bring a retro and modern sophistication to the area. So people get a taste of the city while being, in a countryside cafe. It's going to be a hangout spot. It's going to be a place that, you go to before you're ready to shop or even after you're ready to shop. The long-term goal for this brand is to actually, detach from Garden Grows, and it's going to become its own cafe all over. So this is the new brand that we're going to be starting with. And because this is new, we don't have a style guide yet. So we are going to be taking all of the assets that have been provided to us. We're going to be organizing them in Canva, and then we're going to be building our guide. A little public service announcement, please organize your brand assets. For those of you who do not know, I am a graphic designer, and this is kind of what I do for a living. And I'm a huge stickler on font or on file organization, and Laura can attest to that. Um, so if you ever get brand assets from a graphic designer, or if you do design them yourself, please make sure they are organized. You can use this font system if you'd like, or any font system that that works for you. But if you have been provided files, please make sure that they are set in stone and organized properly. If you do get them delivered to you on something like Google Drive, please make sure you download them and put them on your computer. Especially if somebody else has created that file for you and shared it with you, they have full access to all of it, and you don't want to lose any of that stuff. So please organize all of your brand assets. So let's get into the demo. I already have it open, but if you go into Canva, we're gonna create a brand kit with Canva's brand kit feature. So the importance of having a brand kit is basically a Canva's file system of you organizing all of your fonts, all of your colors, and your logos. So that way, when you create other items, like for example, business cards or social media designs, all of your stuff is in Canva. Everything is organized. It's really easy to access all of your fonts, your color palette. So we're going to build all of this out. So when you create a new brand kit, you're going to name it however you'd like to name it. You have a section to put all of your logos, your colors. This is where you're going to organize all of your fonts. We're actually going to add in a brand voice that I've already typed up. So we're going to put that in here. This is also a place to add any photos. So, you know, when Green Space Cafe actually opens up, we're going to put a lot of like the cafe pictures in here, or any product pictures. Like the plan for Green Space Cafe is we're going to have really massive salted pretzels. So we're going to have a lot of pretzel images in there. This is also where we're going to put a lot of graphics. So if we use certain icons like that leaf, or if we have a coffee icon, this is going to be where that goes. Or sorry, that's where this is going to go. The graphics are going to be other graphics. So if we create like a pattern. But right now we're just going to stick to the basics. So I have all of my files organized. I'm just not going to share the whole thing with you guys, but I have the primary logo, which I'm going to click and drag. I also, because my logo is colored, I also have a grayscale variation. So if something has to be black and white. So I have my primary logo in there. I'm also going to put in my secondary logos. And then I have a
I'm going to jump in with the question, clarification.
Yeah.
Are these PNGs that you would recommend that we're putting in JPEGs? Is there a size recommendation or?
So anytime you are creating a logo, they need to be high res. So something that can be scaled up really large. I always recommend using a PNG because it allows you to have a transparent background. JPEG is really good if you need a smaller file, but a JPEG will have it will have a background on it. So just keep that in mind. There are other files like SVG, which is a file that you can actually edit if you wanted to change things up. Sometimes a designer might provide you with an SVG or an EPS file if requested, to allow you to make changes in the future to the design, to the colors, all that kind of stuff. In a lot of cases, they actually don't provide that. But really, if you just had a PNG of your logo, you will be fine as long as it is high res.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So I have my secondary in there. I'm also going to put in my word mark. Also notice that all of my logos are named accordingly. Like the files themselves are named. So everything is named with the company name, the type of logo it is, and then you can't really see here, and then it will have the color at the end. So if it's meant for like a dark background, or if it's a white logo, I'll put white at the end. If it's made with one of the colors, I'll put blue at the end, just to keep you organized as well. I'm also going to put in my favicons. And I'm going to put in my submarks. So when you design your logo or get your logo designed, you will most likely have a lot of logos to work with. You're going to have your primary, your secondary, submark, favicon, and your word mark. So you will have multiples of your logo. It's really important to have all of these in here. And like I mentioned, to have them named properly so it's easier for you to find. Also, if you work with a team that is going to be using your brand, having them named helps them understand, which one to start with, where to put what, because obviously if you have it as your primary, your team is going to know that it's the primary one to use. If your primary does not work, then they're going to go to secondary. So that part is really important. I also want to put in my color palette. So I have all of my fonts.
Sorry, can we go back? Only because this might be relevant to more people. So question, if someone hasn't provided you with a black and white version, if you have a PNG that's, say your colored little favicon guy, Canva would you be able to edit that in Canva and turn it into a black and white, do you think? Is it that simple, or should you go back to your designer and say?
You can do it on Canva. There are some workarounds to make a logo black and white. In some cases, it might not work. For example, this one might not work because I have outlines around some of them because the little astronaut always remains white. So if I were to take this and make this an all white logo or an all black logo, it wouldn't work because there's a lot of color in it. Because there's 4 colors in this one. So it would work if you had maybe an all black and you might need to make it white. Ideally, you'd like to have a high res PNG of whatever color combination you want. That is usually something that you would discuss with the graphic designer when they are making your brand items, is what kind of colors you're looking for. In the sense of these favicons, though, some designers might not create that for you. These can be created in Canva, and all you'd have to do is just create a circle and then put your logo inside of it. I just personally like creating it in my design program because I actually create all of my guides within Illustrator. But if there's any other things that you don't have, you can also create that in here. I hope that.
Yeah, so best practice would be if you're working with a designer, they should give you an editable file, shouldn't they? That you can edit afterwards, or do they not always give you that editable?
It depends on the designer. I personally provide an editable file. Like I'll provide an EPS file of the primary and secondary logo, and then if they do work with another designer, they have access to it. Some designers don't believe in that, but that is a really important question to actually ask them at the very beginning. Like, hey, am I going to have they might call it the working file or the source file. And if they provide that, I actually think that's a really added benefit. So then as a designer, they're not gatekeeping the design. And then it gives you more freedom.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any questions about how to add your logos into the brand kit? Good, good. Renee, thumbs up, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna add your colors. This part right here is actually really cool too, because if you have multiple different color palettes, this could work. The reason that you might need another color palette is some brands have a secondary color palette if they work with multiple different tones. So you might have like your primary color palette, and then you might have like a lighter one to make sure everything is consistent. But in this part, you really only need one. So Green Space Cafe has 5 colors in their color palette, and I am going to add them all in here. So when we're adding a color, I already have, this is called a hex code. So anytime you see the number sign and then all of these numbers and letters, this is a hex code. So this is kind of like the generic, like every shade, every color has one of these very specific numbers, and it works across all platforms. So I actually have all of my hex codes written down. If you have a color palette and you are unsure about the hex code, there is this really cool website. Oh my goodness, what is it actually? No. How do I find out my hex codes? Your graphic designer should actually provide you with all of this, but if you don't, you can go to a website called Coolers, and you can actually upload a photo into here of, like, if you take a screenshot of your color palette, it will give you all of your colors. Like, it'll search for all the colors. You can also actually do that in Canva. So if I were to put my color palette in Canva, oh, hold on. If I were to put my color palette in Canva, there's no eyedropper tool at this point. Yes, I have submitted my feedback to Canva um, about adding a color palette. There is one for the mobile version. So if I wanted to change the color, notice how there is a photo colors option. So it's actually pulling from all of the colors that I uploaded the photo from. So I can now add in this green because it's pulling from this image. I don't always recommend this because it's pulling from what it understands. If you have the original hex code, that is best. But if you don't, this is a really good workaround. You can go up to add new color and it'll show you what's selected. So this is not quite accurate, but it's really, really close. So this will actually give you the hex code if you do not know what it is. So we're gonna go in here. I have my hex code for this guy. We're gonna add in, you can also name all of your colors if you want to go the extra mile. I'm not going to at this point because that's a lot. So we're gonna add in all of this. Okay.
So while you're doing that, that CMYK, I didn't notice that before. That's really interesting. And that's what we use for printable,
Yes.
correct?
So yeah, there's a lot of, you can actually also add gradients, which is a new feature. So if you do have a gradient with your brand, this is a really cool thing to add. But yes, the CMYK is a really good thing to add. If you do have a very specific code for your CMYK, you can add that in here. So if when you are going to print something, it pulls directly from that. If you do not have your CMYK code, Canva will do its best to convert it how they believe it should be converted. So this is really cool. Do we have any questions about colors at this point? And I'll show you how to use all of this at the end. We're kind of just at the building point. We're all good so far? All right, we're gonna go into fonts. This is the fun part. So Canva does have a lot of fonts available. You can upload your own font. Most of the time it works. So if you do have a font file, where if you go back to this file organization system, you actually do have a folder for your font files, which if you're working with a graphic designer, they should most of the time provide you with the font files, especially if they're working with you on other brand items. If they do not provide you with the font files, I recommend asking for them. So my font for this brand is Montserrat. So Montserrat, and then, so if you do have a font that your graphic designer has been using, and it is in Canva, a lot of the times that'll provide you with like all of these different weights. So for my title font, I'm going to use bold. I'm going to set it at 42 is a really good one. Subtitle is also Montserrat, but it's going to be semi-bold. And then I'm not going to assign a heading, but I'm going to assign body. So it's actually me Montserrat regular. So for this brand, I'm actually only using one font. But because of the font that I'm using, it has so many different weights to it, which is going to help me keep it consistent across all of the branding. Now, if you do have a font, or if you do have a font like collection with multiple different fonts, this is also really helpful too, because you can add in different ones. So when you go to actually create items, you can, it's like, okay, well, I'm creating a title. I can just click title and it'll use the correct font. If my body font is different, I can click body and it'll select the correct one. All right, now I'm actually going to adjust it a little bit more. So it automatically has my my body text at 16 point. I'm actually going to put it down to 14. And then my subtitle, I'm actually going to put down to 28. This can be played around with. You don't have to go this far when it comes to customization. This is just because I know exactly, you know, the typical point sizes that I work with. But if you ever don't want to put this in right now, you can always scale the text when you are creating something in Canva. All right. Next, I'm going to put in a brand voice. So this is an optional piece if you do actually have this written down. So this is like a written kind of explanation. It's really good if you do have a team that you're working with. It's a helpful reminder for them. So I've just put together a super simple paragraph. Oh, and you only have 500 characters. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So this is just an example. And I'm going to save that. All right. Because my brand is super new, I don't have any icons, graphics, or photos yet. But the joy about this brand kit is I can add on to it later on. Okay. All right. So we've created a brand kit. Do we have any questions so far about this brand kit?
I think those questions we'll chat about. They may require some demo at the end, so we're good so far.
Sounds great. All right, now we're going to put this to use. So if everybody has access to that style guide, I'm just going to give this page a little refresher because we made some changes. This is the guide that we're going to be working with today. Really helpful document. It just is a one-pager. It gives you everything that you need, especially if you need to send it to another company, if you need to send it to another team member, even if just used for your reference, if you're creating something outside of Canva, it's just a quick overview of everything that happens. So on the left-hand side, you have a whole bunch of options. So you have your design, elements, text, and then the fourth one down, you're going to see brand. So these are all of your brand kits, especially if you have multiple brands. So for example, Laura and I work with a lot of brands, so we have different brand kits for each one. So right now we're selected on Garden Grows, but I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to select Green Space Cafe. Cute little preview. And look at that. All of the items that we just added are here for us. So now I can actually, and this is also a really cool option too for color palette. If you want to apply your color palette here, you can shuffle and for this sake, that's not what we're going to use it for. But if you're ever using like a template item and you want to quickly apply your color palette, it's a really cool option. So we're going to add in our primary, secondary, wordmark, submark, and favicon logo first. So all of our logos are here because we uploaded these files. So I'm going to go to see all and also see what I mean. Like if you have a lot of logos, why it's really important to name all of them. It's because if you ever have to search for a logo, like if I want to search for primary, I can type in primary and all of my primary logos are here. So I'm going to add in my primary logo. Now I'm going to change up this design slightly because I have grayscale elements. So I actually have 4 variations of my primary. So I'm going to add in this one. If you select it, it'll automatically paste in here. So normally I would just put it right underneath the primary, but I'm actually going to put this over here. And then I'm going to put the grayscale one beside it. Line that up. You can make it look as pretty as you want. And then I'll label them afterwards. You are welcome to work with me, or if you want, you are welcome to watch. Laura, are there any questions that you would like to bring up now or after?
Nope, it's good. You actually answered my question. I wasn't sure what you were gonna do with the ones that were all white. But you
Yes.
are showing us what that looks like.
So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to select all of these, move them up a tab. And then I'm actually going to create another little title or color. And then grayscale. Then I'm actually going to put this, because we have it for secondary, and then we have it for submark. All right. So yes, these guides are super simple, but you want to be as descriptive as possible, especially when you're trying to communicate with a team. And also just remember that this guide is just a reference point. So you don't need to actually be able to pull the items from this document. If you are working in Canva and you don't want to use the brand kit is a paid feature of Canva. You can actually just create this guide. And if you are creating something and you need access to all of these elements, you can keep this guide open while you're working on other documents and copy an element from here, open up the other tab, and then paste it. And then I need, and this is slightly tedious. I'm gonna do this as fast as possible. So I have my favicons. I will say too, like building these guides after you create a brand is probably one of the most time consuming things, but so worth it in the end.
Yeah, it saves time, but also it helps you build brand consistency. And as you grow your business and start to do marketing, whether it's you or you have to pass it on to someone else, it's just too easy to lose sight of what's your primary and how things are getting used. And
Yeah. I can even show an example afterwards of a full guide that Laura and I have created. And what was it, like 22 pages? I think like it was intense. But it's when we're handing over a brand, we want to make sure that, you know, the things that we create are easy to follow and really, really easy to understand. I am going to mention too, because I don't think I talked about it yet, but the reason that in your brand guide, you have the variation on top of a dark background is because there's going to be a lot of like scenarios where you're not going to be working on a white background. So having the ability and the freedom with that other variation is going to go so far. There's a lot of brands that we've worked with in the past that have, you know, brand assets and they only have one color, and you're so limited on your designs, especially when it comes to collaborations with other businesses. If they want to share your logo on their stuff, you need to have options. All right, we're going to go into the colors.
so, you've put that blue onto that black. Is that okay? Is that enough contrast there?
So your favicon, actually, that's a good catch. I did not duplicate that properly. So your favicon, for those of you who are not familiar, and I know we've talked about it previously, but your favicon is like this little tiny icon at the top. Like when you're in a tab on the web page, it's super, super small. So it has to be a very simple variation of your logo, and it has to work on light and dark. A lot of the times people will just have their logo. Like for example, if this was your logo, actually that's a bad example. Yeah, you know what? If this was your logo on dark and you put that as your favicon with no additional background, a lot of the times this up here, I work in dark mode, which actually sometimes puts me at a disadvantage, because a lot of people design logos for a white background. So when I'm in dark mode, if you have a black logo, I can't see it. And an hour, or like I can slightly see it, or it has this weird outline. So having two options for favicons, and there's actually a lot of websites that will allow you to upload two different types of favicons if somebody's working in dark mode versus light mode. So thank you for that catch, Laura, because with this brand, we have two favicons that can work on white, but only one of those two actually works on the dark. So another really good example of why we have this brand guide is to tell people, like, you cannot use this blue on the dark. There's not enough contrast. You can only use this one. So thank you for catching that. Okay, we're gonna go into color. So I already have these colors set up here as a template, but we're gonna change these up and make them more ours. So yes, all of the colors are on the side here in your brand kit, but we're actually not gonna go here for your colors. We're gonna go to the very top. And then when you have a brand selected from your brand kit, it's actually going to show up in all of your colors. So if you ever wanted to change it, this drop down here, just like in the other ones, all of your brands will be here. But we have Green Space Cafe already selected. So I am going to select this green. I'm going to make sure I have the proper hex code. And I'm actually have to change this text to black for proper contrast. And I'm going to repeat this. Oops, I'm going to repeat this step with all of them. And now we have our color palette. The next step is really important, and I actually don't see this very often, but it is such a key element to have in your brand guide, is color pairings. If you have a color palette of 5 colors, it doesn't mean that they can all be paired well together. This is really great when you are designing, social media content, when you're designing your website, business cards, flyers. It's a really good reference to remember, okay, like I can't pair this green with this cream color. There's not enough contrast. It's not going to work. So a quick little visual reminder is really helpful. So I can pair, and I've already planned these out. So I'm going off of my reference, but there are a lot of really good platforms to help you figure out your contrast levels. There's an app that I use called Color Slurp, and it actually makes a little like slurping sound when you pick colors. It's quite fun, but it gives you the levels of contrast that you can and cannot use. So I double checked. I knew that it didn't, but I double checked to make sure that I cannot pair this green with this off-white, or like I can't pair these two colors together because the contrast level is not high enough. So if I layer anything on top, especially text, it's not going to be readable. So I can do this one.
And while you're doing that, that accessibility piece as well, this is part of why we do this, because there's a lot of rules around it, not just what we would maybe consider common sense. As you know, you've caught me a couple times, not having it exactly enough contrast. What is that website or that app that you use for that?
Color Slurp.
Oh, that does the accessibility as well, and will tell you if the contrast is up.
Yeah, there's a few Chrome extensions that you can to scan whether like the color contrast is up to code, basically. But Color Slap is one that I use.
I did drop it in, so
Perfect.
colors.com, right?
Yeah. Yeah, very helpful. Okay, so I have all of my color pairings. It's going to be a really good, helpful reminder for me. Now let's go into fonts. This is a really simple design when it comes to organizing your fonts. And I'd even put in like extra, like, okay, like I know my header and subheaders, they have to be at least 16 points or higher. And then my body paragraph has to be 10 to 15 points. This is also taking into consideration the colors that I use. So if I'm layering certain colors, they have to be a certain size for there to be enough contrast. It's more accessibility mumbo jumbo. So I'm going to put in, so actually all of these are Montserrat. This is what I'm working with. And I'll adjust them all in a moment. So let's see, Montserrat, but it's bold. And then I added this cute little A just as like an example. And then underneath each, I have, you know, what the, which each letter is going to look like. And then for the body paragraph, it's also going to be Montserrat, but it's going to be semi-bold. Actually, no, it's regular. Getting ahead of myself here. Okay. So there's a couple places where you can find all of your fonts. So I actually went up here and found it. So this is a list of like where you'd find all of the fonts. But we're going to go into the next tab that says text styles. And this is going to be all of your fonts that you have assigned in your brand kit. So you can actually click one of these and it will turn it into the correct one with the proper sizing that you've created. But I am, for the sake of this exercise, did it a little bit differently. You can also find them on the left-hand side when you are in your brand kit with all your logos and your colors. And you can find all of your fonts here too. So if I select this, it'll bring up a text box with everything already set in stone. All right. And this is your brand style guide. Why can't I click that? Any question? Oh, and then when you're all done, you're going to export it. We're going to go to share at the very top, download, and then you're going to export it as a PDF. This is the easiest way to share this document, especially if you have multiple pages, if you build onto this. Like if you wanted to put in lifestyle mockups or brand pattern, all that kind of stuff, having a PDF is probably the best document to have. And if you have not connected with Laura or myself, which I do hope all of you are connected, our social media info is here, as well as a link to our Facebook group. And then if you want to follow along with Acorn Studio Marketing, QR code is in the top right-hand corner.